and away and hurrying on. The wind has been blowing, and the rushes and young plants bowing and bending to it, lest it should do them harm, the cowards. And Grip, brave Grip, who cares for nothing, and when the wind rolls him over in the dust, turns manfully to bite it. Grip, bold Grip, has quarrelled with every little bowing twig, thinking, he told me, that it mocked him, and has worried it like a bulldog. The raven in his little basket at his master's back, hearing this frequent mention of his name in a tone of exultation, expressed his sympathy by crowing like a cock, and afterwards running over his various phrases of speech with such rapidity, and in so many varieties of hoarseness, that they sounded like the murmurs of a crowd of people. "He takes such care of me besides," said Barnaby. "Such care, mother! He watches all the time I sleep, and when I shut my eyes and make believe to slumber, he practises new learning softly. But he keeps his eye on me the while, and if he sees me laugh, though never so little, stops directly. He won't surprise me till he's perfect." The raven crowed again in a rapturous manner, which plainly said, "Those are certainly some of my characteristics, and I glory in them." In the meantime, Barnaby closed the window and secured it, and coming to the fireplace, prepared to sit down with his face to the closet. But his mother prevented this by hastily taking that side herself, and motioning him towards the other. "How pale you are to-night," said Barnaby, leaning on his stick. "We have been cruel, Grip, and made her anxious." Anxious in good truth, and sick at heart. The listener held the door of his hiding place open with his hand, and closely watched her son. Grip, alive to everything his master was unconscious of, had his head out of the basket, and in return was watching him intently with his glistening eye. "He flaps his wings," said Barnaby, turning almost quickly enough to catch the retreating form and closing door, "as if there were strangers here. But Grip is wiser than to fancy that. Jump then." Accepting this invitation with a dignity peculiar to himself, the bird hopped onto his master's shoulder, from that to his extended hand, and so to the ground. Barnaby unstrapping the basket and putting it down in a corner with the lid open, Grip's first care was to shut it down with all possible dispatch, and then to stand upon it. Believing, no doubt, that he had now rendered it utterly impossible, and beyond the power of mortal man, to shut him up in it any more, he drew a great many corks in triumph, and uttered a corresponding number of hurrahs. "Mother," said Barnaby, laying aside his hat and stick, and returning to the chair from which he had risen, "I'll tell you where we have been to-day, and what we have been doing. Shall I?" She took his hand in hers, and holding it, nodded the word she could not speak. "You mustn't tell," said Barnaby, holding up his finger, "for it's a secret, mind, and only known to me, and Grip, and Hugh. We had the dog with us, but he's not like Grip, clever as he is, and doesn't guess it yet, I'll wager. Why do you look behind me so?" "Did I?" she answered faintly. I didn't know I did. Come nearer to me." "You're frightened," said Barnaby, changing colour. "Mother, you don't see—" "See what?" There's none of this about, is there?" he answered in a whisper, drawing closer to her, and clasping the mark upon his wrist. "I'm afraid there is somewhere. You make my hair stand on end, and my flesh creep. Why do you look like that? Is it in the room, as I have seen it in my dreams, dashing the ceiling and the walls with red? Tell me, is it?" He fell into a shivering fit as he put the question, and shutting out the light with his hands, sat shaking in every limb until it had passed away. After a time he raised his head and looked about him. "Is it gone?" 'There's been nothing here,' rejoined his mother, soothing him. 'Nothing indeed, dear Barnaby. Look! You see there are but you and me.' He gazed at her vacantly, and, becoming reassured by degrees, burst into a wild laugh. 'But let us see,' he said thoughtfully. 'Were we talking? What was it, you and me? Where have we been?' 'Nowhere but here.' 'Ay, but Hugh and I,' said Barnaby. 'That's it. Maypole Hugh and I, you know, and Grip. We have been lying in the forest, and among the trees by the roadside, with a dark lantern after night came on, and the dog in a noose ready to slip him when the man came by.' 'What man?' 'The robber. Him that the stars winked at. We have waited for him after dark these many nights, and we shall have him. I'd know him in 1,000. Mother, see here. This is the man. Look!' He twisted his handkerchief round his head, pulled his hat upon his brow, wrapped his coat about him, and stood up before her. So like the original he counterfeited, that the dark figure peering out behind him might have passed for his own shadow. 'Ha ha ha! We shall have him!' he cried, ridding himself of the semblance as hastily as he had assumed it. 'You shall see him, mother, bound hand and foot, and brought to London at a saddle girth, and you shall hear of him at Tyburn Tree, if we have luck. So Hugh says. You're pale again, and trembling, and why do you look behind me so?' 'It is nothing,' she answered. 'I'm not quite well. Go you to bed, dear, and leave me here.' 'To bed?' he answered. 'I don't like bed. I like to lie before the fire, watching the prospects in the burning coals, the rivers, hills, and dells, in the deep red sunset, and the wild faces. I'm hungry too, and Grip has eaten nothing since broad noon. Let us to supper. Grip, to supper, lad.' The raven flapped his wings, and croaking his satisfaction, hopped to the feet of his master, and there held his bill open, ready for snapping up such lumps of meat as he should throw him. Of these he received about a score in rapid succession, without the smallest discomposure. 'That's all,' said Barnaby. 'More!' cried Grip. 'More!' But it appearing for a certainty that no more was to be had, he retreated with his store, and, disgorging the morsels one by one from his pouch, hid them in various corners, taking particular care, however, to avoid the closet, as being doubtful of the hidden man's propensities and power of resisting temptation. When he had concluded these arrangements, he took a turn or two across the room, with an elaborate assumption of having nothing on his mind, but with one eye hard upon his treasure all the time, and then, and not till then, began to drag it out, piece by piece, and eat it with the utmost relish. Barnaby, for his part, having pressed his mother to eat in vain, made a hearty supper too. Once during the progress of his meal, he wanted more bread from the closet, and rose to get it. She hurriedly interposed to prevent him, and summoning her utmost fortitude, passed into the recess, and brought it out herself. 'Mother,' said Barnaby, looking at her steadfastly as she sat down beside him after doing so, 'is to-day my birthday?' 'To-day?' she answered. 'Don't you recollect it was but a week or so ago, and that summer, autumn, and winter have to pass before it comes again?' 'I remember that it has been so till now,' said Barnaby, 'but I think to-day must be my birthday too, for all that.' She asked him why. 'I'll tell you why,' he said. 'I have always seen you, I didn't let you know it, but I have, on the evening of that day, grow very sad. I have seen you cry when Grip and I were most glad, and look